This video will contain spoilers for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, so if you don't want to hear it, I suggest not watching, but obviously I think if you're going to click on this video, I think you know what you're getting into. Okay, so I firstly want to say that I'm pretty sure everybody and their mother was lied to by Nintendo about what this game was going to be. In the reveal for it, we heard that the players get to live the events of the Great Calamity. I'm pretty sure everyone heard that and went, oh, a prequel! Yeah, no, that's not what it is, though. That's not what we have, and this is extremely disappointing for many reasons. I think, obviously, we all kind of feel like we were gypped out of this, and nobody knew that this was on a different timeline until the demo came out, and it came as a shock to everybody. It's like, whoa, why didn't they tell us? Why didn't they tell us that this game was going to be a different timeline? I think I know why, because I don't think they wanted to have a game where everybody dies in the end, because it'd probably be hard to kind of sell it to people like, oh, you want to play this game where you like all these characters and then they just fucking die? Probably not. I think they wanted to do a different plot to kind of do more fan service stuff as well, and I think that's a little bit disappointing for a multitude of reasons. And there are some things to me that just either don't make sense or are just so inexcusably stupid and they have no reason to exist. The first thing that I point out here is toward the ending of the game, again, spoiler alert, the champions from Breath of the Wild 1 go back in time, and actually through different timelines, to help the champions in Age of Calamity. Not the, there's not two Daruks, there's just the descendants, or the future champions. They not only go back in time, they cross timelines, which is a totally different thing that I still have yet to figure out why that's a thing, because I didn't know Terrako could do that. Terrako's a fucking badass little robot, honestly. Zelda built some cool shit when she was little. But the fact that this isn't even a thing is just silly, because it's obviously done for the sake of fan fiction. That is the only reason that it exists. Granted, it does make for some heartwarming scenes. It's very clear that Nintendo only did this to basically give a reason as to why the Great Calamity could be prevented, or just have zero casualties at all. This game is literally the definition of the happiest ending possible. Let's focus on the happiest thing ever. Nobody dies in this game's ending. None of them die. It's just like, okay, everyone's dead now, bye-bye. Well, no, that's the original story, is that everyone's dead now, bye-bye. This is the total opposite. Everyone lives happy ever after. This likely changes a lot of things. Like, for example, Link and Zelda's relationship is probably very different because everyone lives, whereas in Breath of the Wild, it's pretty clear that they get really close after defeating the Great Calamity. And it's like, yeah, so this changes things, obviously, because now they have all these people around, and King Rome's still alive, and Hyrule's still doing well. And this just changes so much, because now we have this whole separate timeline, which I don't want to say retcons the events of Breath of the Wild 1, because the events of Breath of the Wild 1 still exist. But then there's the issue of Terrako bringing the other champions over. And it is mentioned that this happens after the events of Breath of the Wild 1, but I assume between the events of Breath of the Wild 2. Sometime in there, the champions go back in time and across timelines to save the other champions, and it's just like clear that Nintendo only did this to basically give a reason as to why the Great Calamity could be prevented, or just have zero casualties at all. This game is literally the definition of the happiest ending possible, and it has some weird implications upon the sequel. What? So this means that everyone was aware that there was another timeline where Terrako existed, and there was a way to prevent it. However, nobody thought to, do more than just this. Like, if this is true, could we not, teleport? Is it only living beings that we can teleport through timelines, or can we, take whole-ass divine beasts over there? Because if we could just have two of every divine beast in the original timeline, we could destroy Calamity Ganon instantly. So things are whack, things are weird, things don't make sense in some cases, but I guess I get it. It just adds a whole mess to things. Time travel always does this in any story. It'll add a whole mess to things, but then they go even messier with time travel and multidimensional. So it's just like, what the fuck are we dealing with here, boys? Beyond that, I have questions about who Aster is, and I think most people have questions because he's not mentioned at all in Breath of the Wild 1. There's no real clues to his upbringing, where he comes from. All we know is that he grew up in a Hylian village. There's no backstory, like he got kicked in the teeth by a fucking Sheikah person, so now he hates them all and wants Calamity Ganon to win. It's just that he's bad for the sake of being bad. And don't get me wrong, I do like Age of Calamity. I think it's a great game. I love the story in general. Like I said in my previous video, I think the story in this game surpasses Breath of the Wild 1 if you take the two games and do them separately. But when you try to apply the games to each other, things just don't add up always, and it's kind of weird. Like, for example, Master Koga appears to be the same age in Breath of the Wild as he is in Age of Calamity, and for it to believe that he is alive during the Calamity, that means he's also alive in the other Calamity. On both timelines, he has to be alive in order for him to exist in Breath of the Wild 1. And that doesn't make sense to me, because how is he going to live that long and then not age? Because I get that Sheikah can live a long time, but it's like they show age. Impa in Breath of the Wild is clearly much older than she is in Age of Calamity. So how? I mean, how does this work? How does he do that? Obviously, Pura took that aging potion, but like, its effects were rather rapid. So you would figure Koga would have the same issue, where the effects of it were rather rapid if he did the same thing. Or like the fucking banana is just a portal to infinite life. Like, does Demise's curse not even apply anymore because Master Koga just ate bananas and now lives forever? No idea. But he dies in Breath of the Wild 1 because he's killed. But like, what? You can't die from natural causes? I don't get it. I don't get why Master Koga exists other than fan service. And this is something normal for Hyrule Warriors. I mean, you literally get to play as Hestu in this game, so it's like, obviously, yeah, this is... Once Hestu became a playable character, I was like, alright, this is getting a little whack, a little funny. And then I unlocked the monk from Breath of the Wild 1, the monk that you fight in the final DLC boss. It's like, okay, this is a little goofy, guys. We're getting a little goofy here with the character selection. But then it just kept getting more goofy and more fanfiction-y, and it's like, wow, this is a real interesting story that we got here. And I do like it. I do think it's a good story on its own. But it's clear to me that with the way Nintendo marketed this game, that they wanted it to seem like it was a prequel. And I think that our logic here was that they could sell more copies if they did such. You know, if we don't tell people that this isn't a prequel, maybe they'll like to buy it because they believe that it's going to be exactly what they want. But it turns out we're not going to give them what they want because, frankly, we don't think they deserve it. Maybe I can't really justify a reason as to why they wouldn't do this, other than they just didn't want to have a sad ending. Like, why wouldn't they just make it true? Because now we have questions that can't be answered, like, why isn't Astor mentioned at all in Breath of the Wild 1? Why isn't Suga alive or even mentioned in Breath of the Wild 1? There's just things that don't really add up. And just some things that don't really make sense. Like, if this game is canon, this means that the Great Fairies can literally move their fountains. And that's terrifying, that they can move it with such agility. Don't like that. That is not really part of the story, but it's just part of the gameplay. It's like, holy fuck, they can literally move their fountains like that fast. How does that work and why? That's never been a thing before. It's just terrifying. I get that they do a lot of shit because, oh, cool game design, whatever, we want to fight the Great Fairies. It's just weird little things in this game that kind of like shouldn't apply to the canon of Breath of the Wild, but now this game's canon, I think. I don't know if Nintendo has come out and said that this game is canon Breath of the Wild, but like, if the champions from Breath of the Wild 1, the future champions, come back in time to save the champions Age of Calamity, it's like, man, that means that this happens after Breath of the Wild 1. That would imply that it is indeed canon. That would imply that it is indeed in like the same set of events here, or I guess universe or multiverse. And that just doesn't sit well with me, because now we have this whole mess of multiple timelines, which, the thing about Breath of the Wild, if you guys don't remember, that the thing about Breath of the Wild's big thing is I was not on any of the timelines. It was not the outcome of any timeline in the Zelda series. It was supposed to be its own thing, one simple own thing. I think that it was either that or people saw it as the ending of all timelines, so it was either convergence theory or it was the totally separate theory. Which either way works, you know, either way works out fine, but it's like, then they add this fucking mess where we have events that happen and then it splits into more timelines. So it's like, wow, it just when it seemed like the timeline of Zelda was getting narrower and made more sense, it's like, they broke it again. They made another mess. We have yet another branch to put on the timeline for events. That's fantastic. So yeah, I don't think that Nintendo's going to take the story anywhere. I think that Nintendo is going to let this sort of die in the water. Age of Calamity. I don't think they're going to make an Age of Calamity 2. I think they're just going to let it die in the water. It's going to be what it's going to be. I think the narrative is done. I don't think there's anything more that they should add to it. I think they just need to let it die and let the sequel do a lot of stuff. And if this stuff is canon, I do have questions about the sequel. Like, are these events going to be mentioned in the sequel? Are the future champions going to talk about going back in time and saving this? Or is it not going to be canon? Because if it is canon, that's very weird. And that means that Link and Zelda are going to be aware of this. And we could have had 2 Links and 2 Zeldas and 2 everybody's. It's just so bizarre. And it's so weird that Terrakill would bring back this champions and not, like, Link and Zelda, who are very clearly powerful. I mean, I guess you need Link and Zelda in order to defeat that Ganon. But this happens after, right? So why wouldn't Terrakill just bring them all back and say, hey, we need to save this timeline? And she's like, oh, okay, well, whatever. it doesn't make sense to me, and I have questions about it, and I don't think I'm gonna get an answer for them, and I think I'm okay with that. If you enjoyed Breath of the Wild like I did, I have 600 hours on that game. 610 now, actually. I've been playing it a little bit more, funny enough. I think you'd like Age of Calamity. I mean, I really mean that. I mean, it might be a little hard to get into. It's a little bit dull at first, honestly. I think it is. I love the gameplay of it, but the story's a little bit slow at first. But that slowness is, like, perfect for world building, because I think that Age of Calamity does a good job of world building. And like I said, you could apply a few things from Age of Calamity into Breath of the Wild. I said this in the last video, but, like, if you take the characters, the relationships between the characters, and the sort of setting of Hyrule, and you apply it to Breath of the Wild and the events of that game's Calamity, things look a lot better, because you still feel like you get the sort of gist of who these people were like and what the people of Hyrule were like. We get the idea of culture, because like now when you go to Lon Lon Ranch in Breath of the Wild, you've seen it, you know, fixed and looking better. You know, I mentioned that in the last video as well. It's like you've seen all these things, so it still feels good. But again, with the timelines, it seems that Nintendo just dropped the ball in many ways, and that is the game's biggest flaw, is what the fuck is this timeline? What is this? And it's very clear that this is... I don't think they originally meant for this to be canon. I think they just kind of meant it to be a spin-off, and if it is canon, holy fucking hell, why? Why is this canon? But yeah, that's really all I've got to say. If you guys enjoyed the video, give it a like below. Tell me what you think about the story. I personally like it, but I think it's got some flaws. Anyway, yeah, that's really about it. Like and subscribe for more videos. Yeah.